Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, listeners, friends and colleagues. Here we are again, new episode, and today I'm actually really pleased to have somebody on who actually made contact through us, through the podcasts. So this morning we've got a very, very positive young man. His name is Arpad Szakal. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly, Arpad.
That's correct.
Arpad's a native of Budapest, but has spent an awful lot of time in the UK. And he works for a company called Cellence Plus. So it's like excellence without the E and the X, but Cellence Plus. And we'll get into the makeup of that organisation a little bit later on. Arpad is the aviation aerospace lead, and he's based in London. So Arpad, welcome on board. Thank you very, very much. And we'll get into how you heard about us and why you wanted to come on.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity to be
It's a great pleasure, Arpad, seriously. Now, one of the questions that I always ask at the beginning of every episode is, why did you want to be on, or why did you accept to come on the podcast?
Well, I came across with your podcast really on YouTube. There aren't that many aviation-specific podcasts out there worth listening to, and
Good.
The guests that you had on the show really convinced me that this is one of those really interesting ones, featuring a number of people from all different facets of the industry. Got really intrigued, and that's why I decided to get in touch.
Good man, and I'm glad you did. And since talking to you and also looking at what you focus on and what you want to talk about today, I think it's going to be of great interest to many people. Yep. So anybody out there, firstly, young man, he's very, very positive. He's got an infectious personality. He's also a great violinist.
Yeah,
so tell us about that.
That's true. I've been playing since the age of 5, 6. Took it very seriously initially, playing in various youth orchestras in Budapest. It was mainly studies and work that took me away from it, but I'm planning to get back to it and really just find a suitable outlet here in the London area where I can really just reignite the passion for it.
Oh, you must do. Something as gifted as that, you've got to get back. And like I said, not joking aside or taken away from the, I would imagine from the level that you're at, but having an Irish background, if you can play some fiddle music on there as well, I'd be so pleased. And I could line you up with where you could easily get into a band to do that.
Up for it.
So we'll talk about that later on. So now, a little bit about the company you work for, please.
Yeah, so working with an organization called Cellence Plus, which is a private executive search and leadership advisory firm specializing predominantly in the industrial construction, infrastructure, ports, airports, aviation, aerospace field. Probably need to make the listeners aware that there is a difference between recruitment and executive search, and the real or the main difference is that recruitment is very candidate driven or candidate focused, so you're trying to get people into jobs, whereas executive search is very much client driven. So a client comes to you, an airline, an airport, having a specific business need or a requirement for mainly senior leadership roles like CEOs, CTOs, COOs, and basically you are tasked to, within a specific period of time, find them, assess them, and place, hopefully, a suitable candidate, basically. So we do this globally. Most of the searches are European or UK focused, but we're active from the Middle East all the way to Australia. So.
Okay, very good. And how are you finding the market at the moment?
It is not easy. There is a shortage of talent at every level. So it's what we're finding is it's quite difficult to really find people who have the passion and also the right skill set, basically for the right sort of organization. It's not only having the technical background, but also the personality, really the character. I think that's our role, is which essentially to assess whether this individual will be the right cultural fit and value fit as well. So.
Okay, right. I'm interested in what you said there about the cultural fit, because one of the things that I've noticed, and maybe it's just because getting older and coming to the end of the career and everything, I always remember as a youngster there was so many characters, and you looked at them and they were inspirational, and no matter what what scenario, no matter what the environment, they always did something that you sort of felt, you know something, I'm glad I worked for him, or I'm glad I worked for her. And just to see somebody who's inspirational when they're there is fantastic, but to know that somebody is still inspirational even when they're not there, and have colleagues say, you know, I'm going to do this because he or she would like to have it done, to make him or her proud of what I'm doing. It's that sort of leadership and character that's so important, that makes a difference, because otherwise it becomes so robotic. And I think industry, to a certain degree now, and we are so regulated and so risk adverse, it makes people just, you know, a little bit like some of the sports now, you know, it's all about speed, it's about technical. There's no sort of, well, there isn't as much entertainment and enjoyment. And I think if you're going to give your life to a company, or a big proportion of it, you want to do it because of people.
Exactly. I think the people factor is absolutely critical. And what we normally look for is aviation is a unique thing, because people tend to be really passionate about it. People don't tend to go into only for the prestige or the money.
Well, it's definitely not the money.
Not the money, but it's one of those industries that get people genuinely excited, and I feel it on myself. I wanted to be a pilot, and mathematics, physics came into the way. I wasn't as good as I should have been in those, and then my eyesight was not that good either, and tried to pursue the passion through hobby aviation or private aviation. But in order to be a great leader in this industry, you really need to have a personal interest. You need to be passionate about this, basically, and that shines through. I think most people that we talk to.
I think people who genuinely care. That word is so special, but so easily used. And when you see somebody who does care, and there's so many in this industry, and that's why I'm personally very pleased, and I know Salem is as well. The people that we've had on, you can tell they care. And it doesn't matter about what sector or what part of that sector or what the passion just comes because they care so much. And most people admit that you fall into this industry. You don't actually sit in a classroom and think, I want to do this. I'm going to be in air cargo. I'm going to be in ramp. I'm going to be
It's not advertised itself that well. I mean, especially if you go into schools, whether it's primary, secondary. I mean, aviation is not one of the first things that come to people's mind. That I want to be an air traffic controller, or I want to go into ground handling, or people are not even aware of the myriad of roles that are available in the industry. They think that, and the gender stereotype, that girls become flight attendants and then guys become pilots. I mean, it's basically, there are so many other opportunities and other avenues that you can pursue, but career counselors and advisors don't make people aware, simply because they themselves are not aware.
It's a shame, though, isn't it? Because if you think, and I've probably said this too many times already, but if you look at the picture of an aircraft, most people only see that because they're sitting on it, or because they're looking at another one when they're going on holiday or business trips. But the amount of businesses that are surrounding that aircraft is incredible. And the most important thing I think people should be aware of is, once you become part of that, it's global, because it's the same everywhere the aircraft lands. Or takes off from. So you've got so much opportunity to go international and take your career, you know,
wherever you want it to go.
Exactly. So now we are talking about culture. We're talking about leadership. You mentioned about your business, the fact that it's very difficult to find people with those characteristics, those qualities. So one of the other areas that we've spoken about and we're going to cover is succession. So why don't companies, or why can't companies actually produce and develop their own DNA stereotype, or their own DNA quality type, or their own DNA unusual type? Why can't they develop their own people in-house? And why don't they?
Most, especially when it comes to airlines, their leaders they tend to be quite long tenured and have been in the industry and have been with the particular airline or airport for a long period of time, and they've been groomed into assuming leadership roles at some stage. search and succession planning is mainly used as an emergency room, Chris. People don't tend to think about it until it's really necessary or something happens, basically. And then we tend to clients come to us basically not as a first port of call, but as the last port of call, because it's expensive. You have to engage someone who's not particularly familiar with your business. And succession is not something that is, or it's becoming more and more board conversation. The main aim of the board or the leadership of an organization should be to ensure that there are 2 or 3 or 4 individuals lined up, whatever happens.
Exactly.
But it's not always the case. It's basically we are used as an emergency measure, basically, most of the time. And it's quite sad because it should be the other way around. People should be thinking about this all the time, really. When banks come to your organization, who's the next one? Who's the next one? Basically, what happens if that individual can't come to work the next day? So it's and it is becoming more and more important as a topic of conversation, but it's still not in the forefront of organizations.
Yeah, because and I think the sad thing is too many people focus on their own tenure.
Yeah.
And they focus on how long they think they're going to be in a particular position.
Exactly.
And they're not actually doing something which Stuart Angus said on one of the very first podcasts. He said, people who make decisions as a manager should do so in the following way. Is this right for the company?
Yeah.
And he said that. And it's so obvious, but it's so overlooked so many times because most people make decisions that are based on, is this right for me?
Yeah.
And that's a sad thing.
Exactly.
Now, as far as succession and looking at the next areas, that's also part of continuity management, contingency management, it's emergency response.
Yep.
It's all the things that, unfortunately, people only focus on when something happens.
Exactly.
And that's the same to a degree with safety and security.
Yep.
You've only got to look at what's happening in the industry at the moment.
Yep.
How, in God's name, can such major organisations get themselves in such ridiculous difficulties? It beggars belief.
Exactly.
So if people don't learn from this and they keep repeating history, then there's something seriously wrong with the DNA of the senior C-level organisations.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is such a crying shame.
Yeah.
And people are so driven by P&L, by bottom line, by targets. They're not actually looking at what you can do to cement a really strong foundation and build from that so that then the business is much more sustainable.
Yeah, exactly.
With regard to succession, some people think if I'm not on the succession list, I'm finished. Well, that's not right, because you can become on the succession list because of different triggers in the business and in your own career. Some people don't want the extra responsibility early on. Some people would like to build their life outside of work by using their work as the catalyst for that. So that's also understandable. But also, every now and again, it's good to bring somebody new or somebody fresh from a different industry in to give a different dynamic.
Exactly.
And if that blend is there, I believe if somebody is identified as part of a succession team, it's almost like getting a promotion in itself, which you can take to other organisations, because everybody knows if a CEO leaves, there's only one vacancy. Exactly. If a CFO leaves, there's only one vacancy. But you still need more people below who've got the potential and the capability to do it.
That's right. I think I would agree with almost everything you said. I think the industry has a tendency to look inwards when it comes to hiring. Basically, especially tenure is quite important. Yep. Most senior leaders have been with the organization for a long time, forever. Yep. They tend to come from senior technical operational roles, and it's seen as really as almost like a necessity to come from either the ops or the technical side of business. Willie Walsh would be a really, really good example as someone who's obviously came through the ranks of the operational, the flying path. Carsten Spohr at Lufthansa would be another good example, basically, for someone who really climbed through the ranks of Lufthansa. I would argue that, while it's important to have a good grasp of the business, of the nitty-gritty of how an airline, how an airport or a related service provider operates. I think this is something that can be learned, really. I think because we're talking about leadership, I think no matter what your background is and no matter what your field of expertise is, as a leader, you're not paid for your expertise, you're paid for your leadership abilities, your ability to excite people, to bring them along on a journey of transformation, and whatever you are planning to do. It's really, and especially the role of the CEO. It's you're not paid to be the expert. You are surrounding yourself by experts, but you are not there to be the brain behind everything and be familiar with all the technicalities. You are there to transform the organization, and especially the CEO, he or she is the ultimate generalist, basically.
Yep. Yeah. No, which is right, because it's just like a manager of a football team. You put all the skills together, you bring them together.
Exactly.
But they don't necessarily gel together. And then you have to look at which ones do and which ones don't. Now that brings me to a subject matter which I'm very interested in. So many organisations, big organisations, successful organisations, they can have a negative impact or a negative element within their organisation that is so influential that new management or senior management are reluctant to address.
Yeah.
And that negativity can have an effect on an organisation for a period of time.
Yeah.
Until such time as it is addressed.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah,
you
I think that especially in the airline industry or the aviation industry, there's not an awful lot to be happy about or to be positive about most of the time.
But why do the negative elements or a negative personality who's got so much power because of their technical or perceived impact on the business, why are they allowed to survive for so long? Because good people will leave the organisation.
Yeah.
Average people will suffer under that sort of a regime.
Yeah.
And bad people just think, right, I'm going to align with this other person because they've got more strength than, in some cases, the actual senior management.
Really difficult question, Chris. I think it's basically these people should be assessed by external, like us, basically, like search firms, assessment firms coming into the organization, and they should not be allowed to bring that negative mindset with them, because especially if you're in a leadership position, you will influence everyone's mindset, basically, and you can't allow that to happen, because your best people will leave. I mean, retention and mindset go hand in hand, basically. I mean, a toxic organization is not somewhere where the brightest people want to be hanging around for a long period of time, basically. So, and aviation competes with much more, or some people might perceive it much more lucrative and much more exciting sectors, like technology, like consumer, like things that are trendy, sexy, and basically things that are more like well paid, basically. And you can't just let people leave that easily.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the legacy problems with the industry is, like you said, people have a passion and they come in and they very seldom leave.
Yeah.
You get lots of people coming in from different industries who then say, this is fantastic, I love it, I stay. But you don't get that many leaving and going to different industries.
No.
So as a result, they're anchored. And I think that anchoring, it stops people from experiencing different things and looking at different ways. So unless they get an inspirational leader coming in, they don't see anything other than the trees or the cliffs or the wall or the open space, and I think that's such a shame.
Yeah. Charisma and really these unique leadership traits are just very important. I mean, look at Virgin Atlantic, the image that they are trying to project, really the fun, easygoing, youthful character. I mean, and that's what attracts still quite a lot of people to the brand, because it's not seen as stuffy, set in the old ways, which some of the other airlines, I'm not going to name any, might be perceived as.
No, I agree. And now moving forward, talking about transformation and what the industry has to do, because there's so many different elements and different parties coming in now, and disruptors, and everybody's thinking what's going to happen next, and who's going to come up with a surprise, and who's going to do this, who's going to do that, what's going to be. People are looking at what's going to be taken away, instead of what can we now develop further, and what can we keep and make sure is secure by doing things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think the next couple of years has for I mean, I'm not being funny now. Just looking at this at the news at the moment, and they're talking about whether Big Ben should bong on the when the UK leaves Brexit, has Brexit rather.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
there's plenty of topics here in Europe. I mean, Brexit has a direct impact on the workforce, on basically how people perceive the UK. Is it still as attractive as it was? I mean, I see that on a daily basis, really, how people, when we are trying to get people from the EU into UK organizations, I mean, the conversation very quickly turns to the current political situation, basically, and how people perceive or how that perception has changed, really. I mean, that's quite radical, to be honest with you.
And how do you think it's being perceived now? I mean, for me, once the decision was made, once all the votes came in, landslide, that's it, move on, forget it,
Exactly.
And it shouldn't have taken that long in the first place.
No, it's
that's like business.
Yeah.
Get on with it. Move forward.
Just do it. If you want to do it, you have the mandate to do it. Just get on with it and do it, and don't prolong it to the eternity. Really, I mean,
exactly. It's been crazy. Yeah. But how do people now perceive?
I think most people do trust that there won't be an awful lot of like structural change here. I mean, they will still be allowed to come in and basically assume roles here, but most people are quite cautious, really. I mean, will the UK be able to keep its leadership status in the aviation and aerospace field? Will others on the continent now be in a more advantageous position, like Germany, Switzerland? I mean, everyone is trying to position themselves as a more attractive place to work. I mean, the UK still has the advantage of the language. I mean, of course, most people are fluent in English, and
I'm still trying to be as well. Yeah.
Easier to adopt to an Anglo-Saxon culture than it is to a German or a Swiss culture in most cases. But from an attraction perspective, it has been a challenge, really. It has been a challenge, especially over the past 2, 3, 4 months, when it really became very acute. I think you really need to have a very attractive proposition for people to seriously consider roles here. But obviously the situation in Hong Kong hasn't been kind to the industry there. Australia, quite challenging, of course, for other reasons. The US, of course, getting people into the US is particularly challenging under the current administration. So every geography at the moment has its challenges, and the sad thing is, Chris, is that what we see is really a closure of borders rather than an opening up of borders. Basically, that's what. And obviously, aviation is the business of freedom. Yeah, it will be interesting to see how it develops. I mean, Hong Kong specifically, especially pilots, flight crews are trying to see what's possible in other geographies like China, where you don't have to be based there, can be based wherever you want to be, and can get a very lucrative package as a seasoned captain or any other flying position, basically.
Yeah. No, there's lots of different permutations now. But coming back to the separatism and all protectionism and all these things, it's just the way that people have been going and the way politics has been driving things, and people are fed up of people playing against each other and this demonising of alternative options instead of working together for some good.
Yeah. The geopolitical situation, especially in the Middle East, of course, that will have a very big effect. Of course, I mean, beyond just diverting flights. I think it's Qatar having issues, of course, with the embargo and all that. I mean, that's going to stay there, of course. And
but I mean, they're doing so well cargo wise. It's incredible.
Fantastic.
The freighter fleet, and it's amazing.
Will be interesting to see how the change in travel patterns. I mean, non-stop flights, ultra long range flights, the Perth flight, the proposed Sydney to London flights will definitely have an effect on the operations in the Middle East. Emirates, Qatar, Etihad will feel that, of course. It's I think they're already thinking about how to reposition themselves. Really.
Yeah. No, it's but again, it's the dynamics of the industry.
Yeah.
Everything changes, nothing stays the same.
Exactly.
And it keeps you a little bit more agile than so that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Now coming back to yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, the violin.
Yeah.
Who was your inspiration? I know David Oistrakh.
David Oistrakh was one of the first ones, mainly because of his precision and really how almost like a machine he's basically. It's just unbelievable. His performance was spot on every single time. Basically.
Yeah. And when you're playing, I mean, how? Because I know a couple of people who play the violin and they can play for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
They don't seem to get tired.
Well,
they go into a zone.
Yeah, exactly. Once you get into the zone and once you're really in the mindset, it's very easy to just forget about the world and basically just concentrate on it exclusively, really. That's how Paganini and all the rest, basically, they just forgot that there is a wider world out there. You have to zone in, and that's how you perform, basically, at the best.
And I'm not sure if Salem told you earlier or whatever, but there's a conference coming up. And we've now come across so many people who you would never know.
Yeah.
They play instruments. So we're thinking of putting together a cargo nuts band.
Yeah.
And actually entertaining the conference. So you'd be able to be a little bit flexible with that.
I mean, interesting.
You consider coming on there?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. If I can add value, basically, if there's no violinist yet, then
I don't think there is there? There's no violinist. No. So.
Okay, then let's talk about that later.
We'll fit you in there somewhere. Yeah, maybe do a Queen rendition of something. Right now, as far as risk, what do you think are the main risks now ahead for companies who are looking to do something different because of the disruptors coming in, because of people's perceptions of other organisations, Amazon, Uber, everybody's getting into transportation now in one way or another. What do you think are the biggest risks or the biggest areas that people should focus on now moving forward?
Especially for the sector, for aviation, aerospace companies, I think given the less than ideal track record of promoting females, diversity, especially gender diversity, I think D&I, diversity and inclusion, not emphasizing that and really not taking advantage of the fact that there are some very capable leaders coming from other sectors. And I think that's a very big risk, really not utilizing people from not only a diverse gender background, but also nationality, international experience with other airlines, industries, not tapping into that and really hiring from outside the sector and really not being as risk averse as the industry has been. I mean, this is an industry that has really the tendency to look inward almost constantly and look for other airlines, look for basically like if you have a COO or a CMO position, let's have a look at Delta or let's have a look at other relevant industries, like just look at the sector. I think that's no longer good enough. You're competing with very advanced. You're competing with companies that you are not even thinking about at the moment, like the Amazons, the Ubers, which are all thinking about transportation or along the lines of transportation. You need innovators, disruptors, people who think differently to come into the industry, because if you just hire people who you know, or basically run to the other airline and basically, that person has a good track record in technical or HR or finance, and let's get them in, you will not get the diverse thinking or the diversity of thought that is needed to compete in the marketplace.
I agree, which is something that I think about often now when I'm seeing different companies. Is a company needs an engine of specialization within their own business, because that's what propels the business forward. So they need to have access to experience of the business.
Yeah.
But they don't need everybody who comes into that to have that experience in the first place, provided they can access it from a reliable source.
Exactly.
Okay, so like the engine room.
Especially at leadership level.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I'm also seeing is that companies look at each individual position that comes up and consider what experience they need for that position.
Yeah.
Without looking at the entire senior management team or the C-level and just below, and look at how does it contribute, how does it complement each other within a team environment, so that you get a different set of skills, but a collective set of skills within the entire team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because they go individual position, it seems to be the same criteria, albeit it's for different positions.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge shame.
Exactly.
So if that doesn't change, then I think there is going to be a problem. Now, coming back to diversity, I'm quite outspoken, but I always think when people say to me, what do you think of diversity? I say that I've got a son and a daughter.
Yeah.
I love them both the same. I love the difference and I love the opportunities, but I would never say to one, you can't do this because you're my son, or you can't do this because you're my daughter. Yeah. I would say to them both, you be as best you can, and then you will become as best as you can.
Yeah.
And I think as well in business, we shouldn't be looking at quotas or ratios or some of these initiatives, because it makes people go completely the opposite way.
Exactly. Doing it just because you want to hit your numbers is exactly the wrong type of motivation behind this whole thing. It's not about numbers. It's about it's all about retaining, because diversity and inclusion, at the end of the day, it's attraction and retention, basically. The only way you're going to be able to get the best out of people and the best people into the organization, if they have role models, if they have someone to look up to and see that, that individual came through the ranks and now is the CTO in the business, basically. Yeah. And I can perhaps do the same or replicate the same success at a later stage in my career. Basically.
Or somebody came in late on in their career or very early in their career and was given an opportunity because of having a good mentor or a good coach who wanted them to do well, in fact, wanted them to do better than they possibly did, and see that as a success and a reward in itself.
Exactly.
And I think all of those, like you say, role models make a big difference. And I think the diversity issue is like if you go to sometimes, especially living abroad, you get invited to different parties or a barbecue or whatever. And when you turn up, some of them you turn up and you experience a dynamic and an atmosphere that's wonderful. And you look around and there's people from different culture, different colour, different age groups, everything, but it just gels.
Exactly.
So it might be the food, it might be the drink, it might be the music, who knows, but it gels. Yeah. But it gels because there's so much difference. If every single person was the same, it wouldn't have the same dynamic. And I think that's how it should be in business. Doesn't matter if somebody's young, give them a chance.
Exactly.
If they're good enough, they're old enough. Exactly. Somebody's old and they're getting towards the end of their career, but they've got such values and they want to have suddenly a last sprint in life. If they're good enough, they're young enough.
Precisely. Age should never be a consideration, really. I mean, that's not. Yeah.
And age, sex, religion, colour, nothing. Yeah. And I think the more you travel the world, I mean, look, 30, 40 years ago, we wouldn't be sitting in a studio like this talking about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've been to Budapest, beautiful city. Yeah. The more you see of the world, the more you see of people.
Exactly. And the more you realize that you really need that diversity of thought and to really become more than what you are today, basically. That's
and it's like a stew.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes people think a stew is traditional but the more you throw in and the longer you leave it just ticking over, the tastier it becomes.
Exactly.
And I think it's so important. So as far as coaching and mentoring is concerned, do you see certain companies having a better depth of capability and what they're looking for if they've got people who are able to coach new people coming in, and that induction is so important, and the branding we've spoken about, the DNA of a company. If an organisation has got a very positive DNA, irrespective of what it is, you've mentioned Virgin. You mentioned Lufthansa. I was with them for 20 odd years. Fantastic. Okay. That makes people want to be in certain places, and it also makes people decide to stay when certain things affect their career opportunities. So do you see the more positive placements and the success of those placements based on an existing culture within those companies?
Definitely. I think a coaching culture, a mentoring culture is critical, and especially females in organizations, they don't have this. They don't have the network. Some of them have. For example, a good organization within the industry would be Air New Zealand, for example. They have a fantastic track record when it comes to really creating networks within the organizations for people to really connect, support each other, and really just come together and share their experiences. And whether it's females or young professionals or Pacifica and Aboriginal networks, I think it's basically you need to get these people together to really just help each other. I think that it's basically mentoring is so important, and really having someone to look up to and really learn from their experiences. I think it's absolutely critical, and that's exactly what's not happening. And in order to really tackle these leadership challenges or the lack of representation of certain groups, you really have to go back to the root causes. I mean, gender stereotypes exist, and basically they need to be tackled at school level. Go back and basically just and that's how you're going to get more people excited and interested in the industry, by talking to and equipping career counselors basically with the relevant knowledge and
updating them.
Updating them, because they might themselves not be aware of what's out there. So I think certainly organizations that have the networks, that have the mentoring coaching culture, they do a lot better. And you see that basically between network carriers who are more traditional and LCCs. LCCs tend to be much more diverse, much more fun, energetic as a result, much more diverse in thought. And they tend to do better financially as well. So it's basically, it's not because they have a different business model. It's basically because they do attract people. I mean, Caroline McCall, I mean, she had nothing to do with the airline industry. Coming in, she had a fantastic stint with the airline, and basically, I think a few people would argue with the fact that she really had a very successful tenure there, and the fact that she was coming from it from a completely different background, media, entertainment,
which
served to her benefit.
Which a leader sometimes has to have those qualities.
Exactly.
But I think it's also, a lot of it is to do with timing and the ingredients. So if she had a very strong technical and experienced team around her, then she's exactly the orchestra leader that particular group needed.
Coming back to music, Chris, the conductor is the CEO, basically, and you really need the exact same sort of leadership skills for both jobs, because you need to coordinate the experts, the violinists, the cellists, the everyone else in the team, to produce that music that everyone wants to hear, basically. So
No, you're right, and I think
music and aviation has more similarities than most of us would think.
Yeah. Both take us to a different place.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Now, one of the things that I do on the podcast is I try and come up with a title of a book. Before the end of the podcast. and it's something that you'll see when your podcast comes up. So I'll let you know what it is. Okay.
Oh, that's something I haven't thought about yet. I haven't thought about.
No, don't worry. I'll give you the title, and it would be a book that I would look at.
Yeah.
If I seen it as a title. Yeah. Okay. So now, as far as that's concerned, let me ask you how old you are.
33 now.
33. Okay, right. Very young man compared to me, anyhow. Where do you see yourself now in the next few years, and why?
I would definitely like to stay within the industry, within the airline aviation field, in the same sort of organizational setting or aspect of it. Would like to get exposure to coaching, mentoring as well, really adding value to industry executives from that angle as well, really. Guiding them and adding some value on that side as well. Really, just
so. Does your organisation offer opportunities for people to subscribe to a leadership or a coaching series of events or courses?
Yeah, we are trying to really just get more active in the space. This is something that definitely is on the agenda. I think it's something that we would definitely like to get into more and more, which is the executive coaching, leadership development space. I think there is a big need, especially in the industry, for someone like us who's talking to a wide variety of people, really, and share the learnings with them.
Yeah, okay. And what would you say, because again, I think within some organisations, people are promoted for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And it's because senior management need to fill a hole or they've got a problem, so they need to promote somebody.
Yeah.
And they end up not understanding that they're actually harming two positions by the wrong promotion.
Yeah.
So they're harming the person who they promote because they're not giving them the coaching and the support and the development and teaching them what's expected from them in that new position. And then the position that they then vacate because they're taking a very good person from a position that's been doing very, very well for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And that harm can take so long then to recover. And also the person who's been promoted, who might not have been given the right direction, starts to flounder a little bit and doesn't really know whether they were good enough, questions themselves.
Exactly. It's the feedback. You need constant feedback from your peers. And I mean, it's basically a 360 is the ultimate indicator how you do.
Yeah, but that's everybody. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't mean, but that's all flowery, wishy-washy. Yeah. That's lovely. Everybody says the same thing. But the realities are, I promote you tomorrow, but I don't tell you what I want from you. I don't give you any support for the first Q1, Q2. I don't give you verification that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You will automatically start doing some of the things that you were good at previously. And that's not why I've given you a new job.
Exactly.
So what I've done is I'm actually eroding some of your confidence, your charisma, your capability, because I'm now making you question yourself.
Yeah, that's why transition and onboarding are key stages when a person needs the most support, basically, especially transitioning from one role, especially from being a doer or a manager one day, and then requiring that individual to be a leader, an overseer, basically an enabler, not to do it. I think those are the life stages when someone needs the most help, really. And then transition coaching, mentoring is absolutely critical within any organization. It doesn't really matter what industry it is.
Exactly. Basically. And don't you think then that the leadership time, the word time, they don't have time for people?
No.
And you know, everybody, I want it in half a page. I want 3 lines. I want a quick statement. I don't want a long email. I don't want to read anything.
Exactly.
I just want you to. I just find that so maddening sometimes.
Yeah. The pace
because
at which
as soon
things
as something
happen,
goes wrong, then it's investigations, it's reports, it's blaming. Why not take a little bit more time and listen to people that matter? And help people that will matter in the future.
Exactly. And not discourage them at the very early stage of their role. Yeah, exactly.
No, I agree. I think it's, and again, I think it's everybody just wants to do things really quickly, and they want to do it. Get it off the table now. Do it quickly. Get it off the table now. And the future is not like it used to be. And it's the same as people in jobs. People got a job, they stayed for 10, 15, 20. Our parents stayed for life with a company till they got their watch at the end. Yep. All those things have changed now.
Very few people stay that long, Chris. I think the current generation it's definitely the 2, 3, 4 years. Yeah. They want to advance really quickly. They are used to instant gratification, basically everything happening at exactly when they want it to happen. And the moment they see that they're not going to be progressing at the rate that they would like to, they're out.
Yep.
So
big shocks, though. Big shocks coming to a lot of people over the next. This social media and this I want it now, and I can click a button and see what it means, so I know it. So why should I have to go through? I just think the patience and the discipline has got to come back into the DNA of the workplace, and that's eroding at
no matter how
too quickly a pace.
Yeah,
exactly. It's a big change now. Right now, yourself.
Just one more thing, Chris, on that one. It's really that 24/7 nature of this particular industry is what prevents some female leaders, for example, coming into the industry, because it's not exactly family friendly. I mean, especially when you're leading an airline, you're leading an operation, even a business unit, it's just, you need to be there 24/7. It's not like you can just switch off, basically, or you can take care of your kids. I mean, it's basically, you need to be there. And that's not exactly attractive to a lot of people.
Yes. No, I think you're right there. And I think for men and women, and men, for people, all you do is you love your work, you love work. There's a big set of differentials between people. The people that I admire are what I call the solid, consistent performers. The ones who come to work on time. They very seldom do anything wrong. They enjoy being there. Great personalities. And they've got a nice life outside of work.
Exactly.
So they don't want to compromise that quality of life by having to put extra hours, extra time, take the extra pressure. They don't want that. They're happy. And to those, and I think they're the most important group. Be happy being happy, and don't listen to anybody else who says, why don't you do this? Or why? If you want to, then do it. Then there's the group who crave the position, the title, the office, or whatever, and their ego. And their ego is not their amigo. It's a killer. And if you do that for that reason, you, my friend, whether you're he, she, whatever age or whatever, you're going to cause yourself problems and other people problems. So better you do something different and have a look at it. But the ones who actually do have to be there for the operational 24/7, it's such a shame, but it's a necessity. And if you are there, you have to be there. And so for everybody who comes in late, it's not because they're a workaholic, it's because they're actually there.
Exactly.
And those people I take my hat off to as well, because they're the ones that are always there. They're the ones who always take the knocks, and I think they should be applauded.
One of the things that we talk a lot about is basically how to attract people is flexible working. I mean, flexible working works in an office sort of setting when you're really not doing like an operation. But the moment you talk about anything technical, ground handling, airport services, I mean, flexible. I'm not sure what flexible working means there. I mean,
there is still opportunities to do it if you do it differently. But you've got so many cost barriers and so many different dynamics. But I think it's definitely an area that somebody needs to specialise in and look at, because it could work and it will work. And the disruptors we've spoken about, they'll make it work.
Exactly.
So anything can happen if you want it to happen. So I agree, we have to do that. Now, yourself, just a little bit more about you. What other interests have you got apart from the fiddle? Or I should say the violin.
Well, I love anything and everything to do with travel. I'm one of those people who go on trips for no specific reasons, really, apart from really just the enjoyment of being at the airport, talking to people, getting on an aircraft, talking to the crew, really, and really try to sneak into the cockpit, things like that. I think it's. I'm one of those people who breathe aviation, basically. Like this is something that I wake up with and go to bed with. Basically, that's the it's almost part of my personality. Or basically, like anyone who knows me a little bit, they know that Arpad aviation, basically. That's
okay, that's fair enough. I've been in this business a long time now, and I must admit, some of the travel, I think, oh dear, oh lordy, it's and something happened to me not too long ago. And anybody that knows me, my nose isn't what it used to be. It's been smashed about, and I snore.
Yeah.
And I got woken up on an international flight by a stewardess.
Wow.
And she actually shook me on the arm. She said, excuse me, sir, you must come with me. And I was an employee of that airline at the time. So I thought there was an incident or whatever, and they knew that I was staff.
Yeah.
So, you have to come, get a briefing, etc. I thought, so I'll wake myself up a little bit, walked into the galley with the young lady, and she said, you walk. I said, what? She said, you walk. And I said, what do you mean walk? She said, you walk. And I said, what do you want me to walk for? And she said, you. Everybody go crazy.
Wow.
You walk. So, so you wouldn't want to be sitting next to me.
No,
I'll tell you what, I'm traveling. But now, so you love your travel, you love airports. What's the most unusual place you've been to?
That's a toughie. Most unusual one, I think it must be the Iguazu Falls in Argentina, basically on the border of Brazil. I did that trip on a weekend. I do quick trips basically
on a weekend. From here.
From here, basically. I mean, you can do that quite easily these days. I mean, I like hiking a lot, especially in the Hong Kong area. Like leaving on a Friday evening, getting there on Saturday afternoon, having dinner with friends there, and then 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, head out to the hills of Hong Kong and basically just explore the surroundings. Fantastic for hiking.
And
anyone
who's in cable car going
exactly
up the top,
exactly go up to the Buddha and
and
then do that the whole day. You get on the flight at midnight and you get back to London at 5:30 a.m. and then you go to work, and then that was a weekend well spent.
Fair play, weekend. And where's the place that's on your must-do list? What are you desperate to do?
I quite like California, like West Coast. Quite like Japan. Also, Korea. I think the Far East is certainly doable. Out of London for a weekend, long weekend, something like that. I think it's basically anyone who has the stamina and the interest and the determination. I think you can do that. Really, I mean, as long as you are able to cope with the jet lag and all that. I mean,
sleeping next.
I sleep well on airplanes. Not even problematic passengers.
Like an old
trouble.
snorer. No, very good.
But
all right. Well, listen, we're coming to the end of it now, and the title of the book I've put down for you is "The Aviation Conductor for Your Future. I Care." And if I seen that as a title, I would open it up. I think you genuinely care. And if I was a youngster out there now, or and I say youngster, whether it be an age or mind, who's looking for a new career, I think you'd give them some excellent guidance, excellent direction. And if they need to get in touch with you, how would they do so?
I'm on all social media. Probably LinkedIn is probably the easiest. It's my name. It's Arpad Szakal. There aren't that many in the aviation.
I was going to say we should spell that.
It's ARPAD. So it's Alfa Romeo Papa Alpha Delta and dot. That would be my email. S for sugar, Z for Zulu, A for Alpha, K for Kilo, A for Alpha, and L for Lima. At cellenceplus.com. That's my email address, and then it's...
And Cellence Plus is CELLENCE. Cellence Plus. Yeah. Very clever wordcraft in there. So, Arpad, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and thank you for some of the points that we've spoken about, and good luck with the future, and keep in touch with us. And I'd especially like to talk to you about some of those courses or some opportunities for people who are thinking about moving and what should they do before they actually make that step.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity, Chris. It was a pleasure to be here, and hopefully the listeners found it interesting or intriguing as well.
I'm sure. At least they know what to do for the next 2 weekends.
That's for sure. That's
so
for sure.
Hong Kong and Argentina.
Never a bad idea.
Okay, thanks, Arpad. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you. Bye-bye.